Coming up on Network Africa, medical aid from Qatar arrives to Port Sudan as Egypt sends 2 aid planes. Fleeing war at home, Sudanese face uncertain future in Egypt. Plus, family escapes from Sudan to Florida amid conflict. Hello and welcome to Network Africa. I'm Ayotunde Balogun. We start in Port Sudan, where the 6th Qatari humanitarian aid plane landed yesterday as assistance continues pouring into the war-ridden country. The plane came in with approximately 35 tons of medical equipment and supplies, including medical preparations, solutions, and blood bags. The fighting between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, RSF, has caused a humanitarian crisis that threatens to destabilize the region, displacing more than 700,000 people inside Sudan and forcing about 200,000 to flee into neighboring countries. Also, 2 Egyptian planes carrying aid have landed in Port Sudan. Now, the planes were loaded with about 20 tons of medical supplies. Egypt's ambassador to Sudan, Hani Salah, hopes the supplies will be helpful for the people in Sudan as they go through the crisis. Still on supplying aid to the crisis-ridden region, the United Nations Humanitarian Response Plan is seeking $2.56 billion to help affected people. That's according to the head of the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs in Geneva, Ramesh Rajasingam, who added that this is apart from the funding and the UN Refugee Agency is seeking to assist those forced to flee. The plan, a revised version of the annual humanitarian plan for the year 2023, is designed to target 18 million people in need.
We aim to reach 18 million people. The funding requirements of nearly $2.6 billion is also the highest for any humanitarian appeal for Sudan. And we launched it together with the refugee response plan that my UNHCR colleague, Mr. Mazou, will speak to, because the crisis in Sudan is rapidly evolving into a regional crisis. The needs in Sudan are fundamental and widespread, as you can expect from a conflict. The conflict that erupted on 15th of April last month in Sudan has killed hundreds of people, injured more than 5,000 people, and millions more have been confined to their homes, unable to access basic services and essential health care. And nearly 1 million people have been displaced, many across to neighboring countries. Today, 25 million people, more than half the population of Sudan, need humanitarian aid and protection. This is the highest number we have ever seen in the country. The response plan we are launching today reflects that new reality.
We're already doing everything that we can, as fast as we can, but sadly, we need once again to call on countries and individuals with the means to step up for innocent people who have lost everything through no fault of their own. Today, we launch an appeal for some $472 million to respond to the needs of over 1 million persons over the next 6 months.
Now, the civilian death toll from ongoing fighting between the army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces has risen to 822, with 3,215 others wounded, according to a Sudanese doctors' union. Confrontations that broke out on April the 15th have worsened despite truce talks in the Saudi port city of Jeddah and the signing of a declaration of principles on May the 11th to protect civilians and facilitate humanitarian aid. According to the doctors, the city of El Geneina in West Darfur State experienced the worst violence since the start of the conflict, recording 280 deaths and 160 injuries in just 2 days. Other cities where civilians died in the clashes include the capital Khartoum and the adjoining cities of Bari and Omdurman. Members of a Sudanese American family have been reunited in California in the United States after the family was trapped and later evacuated by a non-profit organization during the outbreak of war in Sudan. The organization, Project Dynamo, has worked in Afghanistan and Ukraine and is now helping people out of Sudan.
Mohamed Magoub and his wife Lamis Mohamed took their 3 children, all U.S. citizens, to the capital, Khartoum, from their home in San Leandro outside San Francisco last June, so that the kids could experience their home country and connect with their extended families. Magub, 47, later returned to the U.S. for work and would visit the family twice in the ensuing year. But when war erupted on April 15, Magub woke up feeling powerless, unable to get his family out.
So much anguish and pain. You feel like your hand tied behind your back. Your hands are tight. You can do nothing. I tried to pull them out of there. I couldn't. I tried to fly in. If I cannot get them out, at least I have to be with them.
Lamis Mohammed, 39, described the never-ending panic of fear and anxiety.
Like just a nightmare, exactly. Especially when you hear the airplane, you hear the lot of bombing around you, and that was so bad. There is no food out, there is no hospitals, pharmacies, everything ran out.
It took the Florida-based nonprofit Project Dynamo to get the family to safety. They helped Mohammed and the 3 children get from Khartoum to Port Sudan. They were able to speak with Magub when they got to Cairo.
I was at the point where I lost hope, right? They've been almost 2 weeks. Almost 2 weeks when I called my kids and they are talking to me from underneath the bed, right? Suddenly they are in a car going to the east of Sudan, to Port Sudan. And the very next day, they are in Cairo. Brian calling me, it's like with a WhatsApp video call, showing like my wife and my kids are safe, laughing and joking. It's wonderful.
After several days of rest in Cairo, Magub was able to book a flight home for his family and their 3 children, Fatima, 13, Renard, 12, and Abdullah, 10. In this latest conflict, Project Dynamo has rescued 140 people from Sudan, either on charter flights out of Port Sudan or via land, with about 300 more people still there, asking for help to get out.
We now speak to VOA correspondent Mohammed Yusuf, who is online from the VOA Africa News Center in Nairobi, Kenya. Hello, Mohammed.
Hello there.
All right, so let's look at the situation as it is currently. So much fighting still going on in Sudan and all these people attempting to flee through Port Sudan. I bet it must be a circus out there. Give us an update on the situation as we speak in Port Sudan.
In Port Sudan, where the evacuation has been taking place and where most Sudanese who had the opportunity to leave the capital and other areas where there's been fighting have been able to move in. That is where most of the UN agencies and organizations are based. Some government officials are based. That has been the center of much of the humanitarian effort, and people have been able to move to that area. But it's taking more days for people on the road to get to the port city to seek help. People who have got to the port city complaining of looting of their properties and expensive bus fares, and people are also saying it's taking them more days to get. It's 850 kilometers from the capital Khartoum to the port city of Sudan, and along that route you can imagine it's a very long journey, but people have been trying to avoid certain areas, certain villages, certain towns where there's been much of the fighting. It's been more dangerous for the people to get into the port city, and as day progresses, weeks goes on, now it's the second month, it's still getting more dangerous. People are complaining of more airstrikes, airplanes hovering above their homes, and we understand now, of course, that the number has doubled, about 700,000 people according to the UN agencies in just 1 week. The numbers keep going up. 2 weeks ago, we were talking about 100,000 people fleeing to neighboring countries. Now it's 200,000. And much of this now is happening. We're trying now to understand why it took so long for people to get out. Of course, people don't have means to get in, but also we also understand is that people have been trying to move from one area to another to seek help, to seek shelter where they think is more secure. But now, as it gets to the second month, it now is getting more dangerous. More places now is being occupied by the armed forces who are engaging in the capital Khartoum and other parts of the country.
Now, from the picture you've painted there, it will seem that getting out of Port Sudan, which looks like the escape route of choice, is an uphill task. Where do we go from here concerning that?
It is a foreign evacuation is still ongoing. You've just released a report of a South Sudanese family reuniting in the US. So this is a process that is still ongoing for many countries. But it gets to the port cities where, if you fled the capital Khartoum or where the places of conflict, that's where now maybe your journey may end there. If you are a person who is dependent on yourself, then now you are in the hands of aid agencies who you need them to help you. That is now the picture for many people who are lucky enough to leave, to relocate in foreign countries will do that. But now for that family, for example, who are now going back to the US, you of course, we can all bet that they have left their family, more of their family members behind. And that is now the reality for many Sudanese who are also now trying to leave Port Sudan to neighboring countries or to other countries. That's the reality. And it's going to take long because things more people are fleeing, of course, and with humanitarian now assistance coming in, of course, you expect that the resources that will be allocated will be may not work for some people, but that's the situation now. For people who will be lucky enough, will relocate. For the Sudanese who are not lucky enough, at least they will have some sort of safety in Port City, Sudan.
All right, so we understand, of course, like you rightly pointed out, that more aid and more humanitarian aid that is arriving again to Port Sudan. How much access do authorities in Port Sudan have to areas of conflict in the country to deliver this aid?
According to the UN agencies, we understand that Sudanese Red Cross have been able to distribute assistance to about 70,000 people in Khartoum and in other parts of the country. But compared to what now the UN is seeking for help, 2.6 billion, to support 25 million people, in the capital 5 million people, more displacement is taking place. Now the number is 700,000. And you look at 70,000, we're not talking of people now in Port Sudan, we're talking people outside in areas where organizations don't have access. That is what most agencies have been trying to seek and call for at least a truce and to provide that corridor. At least they can provide assistance. We were seeing also situations where it's getting more dangerous for the humanitarian organizations, workers, and also some of their warehouses now being looted. But to give you a picture of now what they're trying to maneuver and see ways they can also work, we understand that they're trying to support aid organizations, especially Red Cross in neighboring countries, Ethiopia, Central African Republic, Chad, Egypt, and South Sudan, at least to provide that assistance for the people who now will be crossing to the neighboring countries. That support now is alternative. That is an option that is being provided. But in the capital, where now you have sort of resemblance and stability and more assistance, more aid is coming in, and that is the port city, Port Sudan, rather. We're seeing now organizations like the United Nations trying to engage some local actors and see ways they can get truce on and how some of these aid supplies that is the port can get in, and at least people can get help that they need. We understand that food is now there's no food in many parts, in many places. People can't afford even if it's there. The food prices are up. There's no water. There's no electricity, and this is 2 months into the war, and situation may, as this war continues, of course, is going to get more dangerous for the people.
All right, definitely. We'll keep it at that. And I thank you for being with us on Network Africa, Mohammed. We thank you for your thoughts.
Thanks for having me.
After the break, Burundi ex-policeman seeks to become Greece's first black MP. Details in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back to Network Africa, and of course we're still beaming our searchlight on the ongoing conflict in Sudan. Sudanese doctor Makram Walid used to come to Egypt with his family for annual vacations. But as he looks this month at Cairo's Nile, the only thing connecting him to war-ridden Khartoum, he realizes it might take him a long time to return home. Others like him have left illustrious careers and even loved ones in the crisis-torn country, yet are having a hard time getting jobs in their country of refuge.
25-year-old general practitioner Makram Walid was preparing to take exams qualifying him to work in the UK, but then his country got into a vicious war between the armed forces and the powerful rapid support forces.
I had an exam this month. It was booked and everything, but I had to cancel it. Mentally, I'm not ready to take this exam. Even everything that I studied for, like what we went through, it literally all vanished.
He braved the perilous 8-day journey from Khartoum to Egypt with his parents and sister. Now he says his life is in limbo.
So my future plans, basically, at this point, we don't know what we're gonna do. Me and my family we're taking a step back to rethink everything, make plans, for A, B, and C. Maybe look for jobs. And if we're gonna settle in Egypt for a long time, God knows when we're gonna go back. If we're gonna stay in Egypt for a long time, that should be looking for a job should be our next step.
Walid is among tens of thousands of Sudanese citizens who fled the war to Egypt. An NGO in Egypt's Giza currently provides homes to many displaced Sudanese families, mostly mothers with their children, who spend their life savings to come out to Egypt. Amal al-Masakbal initiative, which supports refugees and migrants in Egypt, offers support to those displaced by war and have nowhere to go or no family in Egypt. So far, the organization has helped 24 Sudanese displaced families. They offer food and medicine, as well as temporary stay at 3 shelters run by the organization, before being moved to apartments with cheap rent. As all the families supported by the organization consist of single mothers with their children, looking for job opportunities for the mothers is essential.
Job opportunities for women above the age of 35 are very difficult, especially here in Egypt.
Among those currently living in one of the organization's shelters in Giza's neighborhood of Bukal Dukor is 42-year-old mother for Hala Ali, who came all the way from Khartoum and had no money left. Leaving behind her husband, with whom she lost contact, and without a degree or a job, the future is uncertain for Ali. Sudanese currently displaced by the war face many challenges in their host countries, which include housing, difficulties in registering themselves as refugees, lack of psychological support, families separated from fathers who cannot acquire visas, and difficulties obtaining work permits.
10 more bodies have been recovered in Kenya's coastal forest, where people were made to starve to death after joining a doomsday cult. This brings to 211 the number of bodies recovered as the police continue investigating the deaths. The exhumation process in Shakahola Forest resumed after a 2-day break.
The search and rescue team managed to rescue 3 men, 3 male adults, unfortunately in critical condition, and they have been taken to Malindi Sub-County Hospital for stabilization. We've had 4 arrests, and they are all male and in custody, assisting the investigation team with investigations. The Frolensky team has managed to exhume 10 bodies today. And our desk of missing persons, or those who are reporting their loved ones, has not increased. We still remain at 610.
The African Development Bank says the outcome of Zimbabwe's upcoming presidential election and the issue of compensating white farmers are key factors in efforts to restructure its crippling debt. The bank head, Akiomi Additional, is directing efforts to help Zimbabwe pay off debt of more than $8 billion to foreign countries. Zimbabwe has turned to the African Bank to help pay billions of dollars in compensation to the white farmers who had their land seized by the previous government of Robert Mugabe from the year 2000. The country has not received funding from lenders, including the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, for more than 20 years as a result of its over $14 billion external debt. Burundi-born ex-policeman Spiros Hagabimana is seeking to become Greece's first black MP in a country where migrants rarely hold public offices. He is contesting in the southeastern Piraeus II electoral district under the conservative New Democracy Party in the May 21st election. The 54-year-old Hagabimana first arrived in Greece in the year 1991 on a scholarship to study at the Naval Academy. He then graduated in 1996 but was forced to seek asylum in Greece as Burundi was then embroiled in a military coup. He received Greek citizenship in 2005, and in the same year he returned to Burundi for peacekeeping efforts with the UN. He hopes the color of his skin will not be the focus in the upcoming elections. Côte d'Ivoire loses a lot because it does not add value to its cocoa beans before exporting the rich pods. A chocolate maker and founder of Chocovi, Vivienne Kwame, is changing the story with her fine chocolate, which she makes, showing patriotism to her nation.
It was love at first sight for Vivienne Kwame when, as a teenager growing up in Ivory Coast, she first saw cocoa trees with ripe pods on their trunks that reminded her of babies clinging to their mothers' backs. She decided cocoa would be a part of her life, and in 2021 she set up her own company, Chocovi, to make and sell chocolate. My goal is to show to the eyes of the world that we can make good chocolate without quality beans. As I like to say, there can be no chocolate without cocoa. Ivory Coast is the world's top producer of cocoa beans, but the vast majority is exported to be processed elsewhere, with Ivorians missing out on the added value. I went to Italy to get trained in the process of transforming cocoa beans to the finished product. After I returned, the adventure of Chocovi began. Chocovi is one of only a small number of companies making chocolate locally. So far, Kwame and her 5 employees are processing about 2 tons of cocoa per year and selling at stalls and malls in the commercial capital, Abidjan. But she is seeking investors to scale up. Philomena Dable, a customer at a mall, was impressed with both form and content. I tasted the chocolate. It's pure, it's natural. This box, with the national colors of Ivory Coast, it's wonderfully presented. I love it. Vivienne expresses her patriotism through her elaborate packaging, with some chocolate bars shaped like a map of Ivory Coast, and others wrapped in paper decorated with images of the country's beauty spots and cultural traditions.
And that's Network Africa. Many thanks for watching. I'm Ayotunde Balogun.